Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're going to be doing guided loving kindness meditation. This is where I guide you in a loving kindness meditation session, and then I just spend the time afterwards just opening up to any and all questions that you guys have related to the path to enlightenment. If you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you will be able to ask questions by putting that into the comment section or raising your hand electronically in Zoom. And if you're listening to this on the replay like YouTube or Facebook or the podcast, you can do the meditation along with us too. So I'd like to welcome everyone, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly, and invite you to join for this meditation. The way that I'm going to start this is with some chanting to ease us into meditation. There'll be a period of time where I'll guide you in breathing mindfulness meditation. Then it'll just be quiet and we'll be meditating together just for a few minutes, preparing the mind for loving kindness meditation. Then I'm going to come in with these affirmations where you'll hear me saying these statements out loud. And you would just repeat these in your own mind. And this is helping to rewire your mind to become more loving and kind so that in your relationships you can be more loving and kind and experience more harmony in your relationships. Then we're going to come out of the loving kindness meditation, moving back into breathing mindfulness meditation, and then we'll come out of that with some chanting. So it's kind of like a loving kindness sandwich with loving kindness in the middle, the lettuce and tomatoes, the breathing mindfulness meditation, and then the bread holding it all together is the chanting. And as I mentioned, this loving kindness meditation is to transform your mind. It's to move the mind away from the anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, any kind of resentment or hostility, even negative self-talk within the mind. If you have this inner dialogue where you're degrading and diminishing yourself, this meditation will actually help you with that. So you can join along if you like. There's positions like seated, lying, and standing that you can use for loving kindness meditation. As I mentioned, I'll start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation, and then I'll come back in with some guidance to help you from there. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa อิติปิโสมะกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Whenever you get to your next out breath, repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May Mom and Dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May my family, friends, co-workers, and neighbors all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May all those who have harmed me be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness in the suffering it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Makewa Phutang Makewanhang Abhivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami อะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุตเตโรปุริสานามาสติสัตตาตวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to everyone to our class today. Welcome if you're joining for the first time or you've been joining regularly. Welcome to our class. What I do on Wednesdays with students is just guide you in a meditation and then open up to any and all questions that you might have related to any aspect of your practice that you would like to ask questions about. You can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand electronically in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. You might have questions about meditation or the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, any aspect of your practice, anything you're struggling with that you would like to ask questions about, just let me know and I'll be able to help you with that. Okay, it looks like Helena has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hello, Sawadika.
Sawadika.
So, David, I would like to know when I see something that is unpleasant to the senses, like trash, or when I'm seeing something really beautiful, like a flower or a piece of art, what should I repeat to myself? Like, so far I've been saying something like, these are just forms, merely forms which are impermanent, and they are like pixels on a screen, and they have no meaning. It works to some degree. So if you could please guide me, like what would you say, or what do you say?
For me at this point, I don't say anything. I just look around and everything's peaceful and everything's joyful. But there was a period of time where I went around the world and every time I saw impermanence, I would just kind of soak into the mind like, that's impermanence, that's impermanence, that's impermanence. Like a crack in the sidewalk, or the paint is fading on a fence, or you look up at the trees and the trees have green leaves and then there's brown leaves on the bottom, on the ground. You need to do what the Buddha described as develop the perception of impermanence in the mind. And this is essentially deeply soaking into the mind that everything around you is impermanent. If your mind needs that, then you can do that. But don't feel like that this is something that you need to do for the rest of your life. It's just a matter of that you would like to do it for a period of time until you deeply understand that these things are impermanent. And now, if you notice through the contact, through any kind of pleasurable thing or any kind of agreeable or disagreeable thing, if you're noticing the arising of discontentedness as a bodily sensation, you would like to cut it off and let it go. But if you're not noticing any discontentedness arising, either pleasant feelings that are conditional or conditional painful feelings, then just go about your day and just do the things that you need to do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can I ask something else?
Sure, you can ask any and all things that you like.
Okay, so I was thinking about beings who reside in the non-material realms. are not living beings because they lack the first aggregate of form, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if hypothetically, like there was a famous Jewish story that there was a King Solomon who was supposed to use demons to construct a beautiful Jewish temple. So if that story was true, that he somehow enslaved demons so that they could serve God, that would be something correct, right? Because they are not living beings, so
Yeah, I
no unwholesome karma.
I suspect that that's completely untrue. That's not true
Oh, okay.
that you can control. So this is why the Buddha shares what a living being is, that it has form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness, because you can cause harm to a living being. So that's essentially animals and humans, right? And you need to
Mm-hmm.
understand about like the first precept of not killing, because if you were to intentionally kill an animal or a human, then there's unwholesome gamma that you're going to experience because of that. But you can't kill a hell
Mm-hmm.
being, an afflicted spirit being, or a heavenly being. So knowing that they're in existence, but they're not what we would consider a living being, that's helps you to understand that you can't cause harm to these formless beings, so there's no harm that's going to come back to you. Because sometimes people are really scared of hell beings or afflicted spirits, or they're really attached or craving to be with heavenly beings, and the mind can let all this go, because essentially what you're paying attention to, very close attention to, is that you're not causing harm to any living beings, because you can't cause harm to these other beings.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And
Can I just add something to
I
that,
also would,
Helena?
of course.
Yeah. So on this path to enlightenment, there's certain unwise decisions that have been made in the past, and it's produced a certain amount of unwholesome karma. And now, what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're awakening to the wisdom of this natural law of karma, so that as that unwholesome karma is coming back to you, you can extinguish it and eliminate it. And that's where you're cultivating wisdom to extinguish it. So as any kind of unwholesome karma is coming back to you, you're working to extinguish it. And you can't produce unwholesome karma through interacting with formless beings, because there's nothing that you're doing right now. If you were yelling and hollering and shouting and things like this, of course there's unwholesome karma there. But this unwholesome karma that's coming back to you, you're looking to extinguish it. And you're also, by the way, not looking to produce any new unwholesome karma. But of course you will, because the mind's not fully awake and fully wise yet. Until the mind's actually closer to enlightenment, you'll still be producing some unwholesome karma. So by understanding the formless beings and form beings, then you know to pay attention to whatever is coming back to you, and then extinguish that as you're making your way forward on the path to enlightenment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And just one more. I'm curious if enlightened beings can still like cuddle with their life partner.
An enlightened being can do anything they would like to do. There's no rules that, like, here's the rules of things that an enlightened being can do and that they can't do. An enlightened being is going to do whatever they choose to do, whatever they would like to do. So if an enlightened being would like to cuddle with their life partner, then cuddle with their life partner. That's what they would like to do, then do it. There's no harm in that, right? An enlightened being, their mind is fully awake. They're not causing any harm to other beings, and cuddling isn't causing any harm. Where in the past, before the mind was enlightened, you might have cuddled as a way to warm up to some sexual activity. An enlightened being is no longer having sexual activity, and they're no longer interested in that. So if they're going to cuddle, it's not to warm up to sexual activity. It might just be to embrace and be close and these kinds of things. They could totally do that because they're not causing harm. So it's not about what they can or can't do. It's about just making their own personal choices, and they're not going to be causing any harm to any beings whatsoever. And when you look at your action of cuddling, you can see that there's no harm in that. So if an enlightened being chooses to do that or not, it's up to them.
Got it. And what about crying? Because I've seen an enlightened being laughing.
Hmm.
But crying, like, it's probably not possible, right? Unless it's a physiological reaction to dust. Or...
Yeah, so crying is a bodily action that is oftentimes associated with a mental state. And the mental state, oftentimes, that crying is associated with is the sadness or despair or misery. An enlightened being isn't going to experience crying based in misery or despair or sadness or anything like that because their mind doesn't experience that. But the body could cry because it's a bodily action that the mind's so joyful and you could experience some crying because you're so joyful, right? So crying isn't
Okay.
just because of sadness or despair or misery. You could be so joyful and something could be so funny that the body starts to cry, right? And this is where you can see that the body is one thing and the mind is something completely different.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Looks like Viphav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
And David, I had a question. I had two, I guess, different questions. One was around meditation. I know you suggested that frequency is more important than depth. I do feel that sometimes the depth also gets you in a, I guess, place where it's more like a deeper experience. We get to like many different levels. So I guess at what point do you suggest like going to deeper levels of meditation and spending more time on what is like the appropriate time, amount of time to spend on like deep meditation, I guess.
Yeah, so the frequency of your meditation is more important than your duration. It's not depth, it's duration. So if it's a matter of like one session for 30 minutes or two for 15, I recommend people go for the two for 15 because this frequency in your meditation is going to have much more impact than just one for 30 minutes. And then you just gradually expand that 15 minutes to longer and longer. So, what was your question after that?
Yeah, I'm just saying that I think doing more like 30 minutes seems to be have more effect on like going to a little bit more, I guess, deeper states of meditation than just doing say 10, 15 minutes, which by the time you get to some point you're already at the end of the session. So it seems to me that like spending a little bit more time in one session helps like getting to a little bit more deeper state.
What you'll notice is that the real changes in the mind are occurring at that 30-minute mark. That's not to say that 15 minutes isn't beneficial or 20 minutes isn't beneficial, but you'll notice that 30 minutes is what you can essentially build up to on a regular basis. If you go longer than that, go for it. It's up to you. But in terms of like a daily regular practice that a household practitioner can build up to, 2 to 3 sessions for 30 minutes or more is what an individual could use in order to move their mind to enlightenment. Out of all the meditations that I've ever done, I could probably count on maybe one hand, possibly two, but probably one hand, the amount of times that I've meditated for an hour or a little bit more. Sometimes people get really into meditating for these really elongated times. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what they would like to do, right? Like sometimes people go away to retreats and they meditate for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. But the thing is this isn't sustainable. And what you're looking to do is you're looking to build a practice that is sustainable for you, that you can be in the middle. So if someone goes away to a retreat and they meditate 8, 10, 12 hours a day for 5 or 10 days, but then they go home and they're not able to meditate at all, or they just meditate here and there once a week, their mind hasn't built a consistent practice. What you're looking for is a consistent, long-term, sustainable practice. In 2 to 3 sessions for 30 minutes or more is what you can build as a long-term, sustainable practice. You're a professional who works in the workforce. You're a husband, you're a father. You're going to need to find what is that sweet spot for you. But what I'll share, what I recommend is 2 to 3 for 30 minutes or more.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My second question is maybe more meta question. Is that if you are in the animal realm where you do animals make choices and decisions that, I mean, help them to get to like human state to do to become get on the path of enlightenment, because they have, I guess, limited consciousness, and most animals are probably looking for this sustainability of food and things like that. So how do animals go from animal realm to human realm?
Sure. So animals have all five aggregates of form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. And their mind can't develop to the point of enlightenment, but they are making choices and decisions that are affecting them in their next rebirth. So, for example, there was a rat here in Cambodia that I saw on the news about a year ago, where humans had trained this rat to sniff out landmines from the war that had occurred, 50 years ago. And these landmines were causing a lot of harm to children and adults because they've been buried so long ago, and people are walking by and they're getting injured or killed from these things. And this rat lived about a good 6 years, and they accounted for and attributed 100 landmines that it had found over its 6-year period in history. So it was humans that trained that rat. And if it wasn't for the humans being involved, that rat wouldn't have been able to learn that technique because it doesn't have the consciousness to learn that by itself. But it was making choices along the way. Even though the humans were training it, it made personal choices in order to get to that point where it had the training, and then it went off and did the work. And because it was so light, it didn't set off the landmine. So in this particular situation, this is a perfect example of an animal that is either going to have been reborn into a even better animal existence or into a human realm because of the amount of wholesomeness and wise decisions that it made during its life. Or take an example of an elephant. An elephant is an animal that tends to be compassionate and loving and warm and gentle, very caring for the other individuals in its herd, and it doesn't tend to kill. It can kill, but it doesn't tend to kill anything at all. And these beings in the animal realm are most likely able, or more likely able, to be reborn into the human realm, where, for example, a lion that's constantly killing, it's very rare for a lion to be reborn from a lion existence straight into the human realm. It can happen, but it's somewhat rare. So as these beings are being born into various animal existences, there's certain animal existences that are more problematic and harder to move into the human realm, and then there's other animal existences that are more likely to move into the human realm. And it all depends on the type of existence. Are you a lion versus an elephant? These kinds of things. And this is why the Buddha describes the animal realm like a prison, because once you're in the animal realm, essentially you're looking at playing, fighting, eating, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, right? These are all the things that animals do in order to survive, and they're just looking out for their own basic survival instincts. And now they're making decisions for that and because of that, and this is what they're doing. So once they're in the animal realm, once a being is there, it's very challenging to get out, but ultimately they will get out and have the opportunity to get to a improved rebirth so that they can get to enlightenment. But once you're there, it can often take countless rebirths in the animal realm before you finally get to an improved rebirth like a turtle or a rabbit or a elephant or something like this that isn't killing, in order to sustain its life so that it can then get into a human existence.
Yes, so I guess some like an animal like a cow, which provides a lot of the milk and the food for the human beings, is probably more likely to get into and does not kill and stuff like that. It's probably more likely to get into a human existence because it's doing a lot of goodwill to providing a lot of its goodwill to the humans.
It's more likely to get into the human realm because it's not killing, but not because it's providing milk and food, because it's actually not providing milk and food. It's human beings that are forcing it to do that. If it wasn't for human beings, This cow wouldn't do that. So a cow is essentially being forced to provide the milk. It's not a free will decision. It's being enslaved by humans in order to provide that milk.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And Helena has some more questions. Go ahead, ma'am.
All right, thank you. So, building up on that last question, I actually thought about it recently. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that human consciousness could kind of retrocede into like a mouse or a cockroach. It seems counter evolutive. And how is it possible? Like, I mean, maybe we are not super advanced of the consciousness, but for sure, like, much more than a cockroach. And like, how?
I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you, but let me repeat what I think you said, and then let me know if that's what you're asking. Are you saying, how is it possible that a human being can go from a human existence with their human consciousness into like a cockroach or some other animal?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's human beings that are alive today that are functioning very much like beings of other realms. So you can have a human being who's functioning very much like a hell being. And you can have a human being that's functioning very much like an animal. You can have a human being that's functioning very much like an afflicted spirit. And you can have a human being who's functioning very much like a heavenly being as well. And you can have human beings that are functioning like human beings, right? So based on how the mind's functioning, that's how one is going to be reborn. It's the condition of the mind at the time of death. So let's say, for example, at the time of death, an individual is having extensive amounts of craving, anger, and what we would refer to as ignorance or unknowing of true reality. And not focused on the actions, but let's focus on like the mind, but I'm going to say the actions. Let's just say somebody is like heavily into pornography, heavily into drugs and alcohol, heavily into sexual misconduct and stealing and lying. This is like extensive amounts of craving, desire, attachment. Yes, there's certain actions that are motivated by that, certain unskillful conduct, but where this is all coming from is craving, anger, and ignorance within the mind. So this individual with extensive amounts of craving, anger, and ignorance, even though they're in the human realm, they're functioning very much like a hell being. So this being is going to be most likely reborn into the hell realm. Then you can have beings that are functioning more like animals. Like what animals do is they tend to play, they tend to fight, they tend to run around and eat and steal food, and they tend to have a lot of sexual misconduct where they're having sex with multiple beings. So as an individual is in the human realm doing these kinds of things, their mind is functioning very much like a animal, and now they can be reborn into the animal realm. It's not the same consciousness that is going into an animal existence. So this human body and this human consciousness is together in this life, and then when they separate at the time of death, this human consciousness is impermanent, but the contents of that mind are moving into a new mind. So this new mind is an animal consciousness, for example, but it has the contents of this human consciousness where there was extensive amounts of craving, anger, and ignorance, for example, going into the hell realm, or a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance that goes into the animal realm. So it's not the exact same consciousness, but it's the qualities of the mind in those contents that are moving from one consciousness to the next.
Okay, got it. And when you remember your past lives, how do you know that, let's say your mom in this lifetime, how did you recognize her in like a past life? Because she had a different body, different consciousness. So like what's the factor that differentiates?
Can you say that again? The audio is not coming through so clear.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I will just write it in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, you can write it in the chat. I upgraded my Zoom, and I don't know if that's the reason why the audio is not so good, because I noticed with Vibhav, the audio was coming through not so clear as well. I don't know if it's on my side or your side, but definitely something that you might look at after our session.
Yeah, I could not hear Helena as well either. But
oh, okay.
I can hear you very clearly.
Okay, good, good. So maybe it's just the audio coming through on your device there, Helena. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. I'll just wait to see if we can see Helena's question here. Okay, how do you recognize your mom in another lifetime? Not everybody's going to recognize their mom in the next life, right? Like if you had a certain mom in one life and then you had another mom in a different life, not everybody's going to necessarily recognize that. And it might not be the same exact person. So each situation is going to be a bit different. And the goal isn't to remember your relationships from this life so that when you get to your next life, you'll remember those people. But there is the ability in some situations, depending on the level of awakeness in your mind and the level of your consciousness, that some people can know, like, oh yeah, like my grandmother in this life was my mother in my previous life. Some people can know those kinds of things. Or my dad in this life was my mother in my previous life, right? You can have these kinds of things that are occurring, but that's not the ultimate goal. In your development, in your path to enlightenment, the ultimate goal is to purify the mind, get rid of the cravings, desires, attachments, train the mind to get to this peacefulness. Any of that kind of past life stuff, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. You can't induce it. You're not interested in forcing it. And even when it does occur, essentially the benefit you get from being able to see your past lives is, number one, without a doubt, it 100% confirms for you the cycle of rebirth. But there's other ways to confirm the cycle of rebirth even without seeing your past lives. But if you have seen your past lives, it will 100% confirm that for you. And then the other thing in seeing past lives is it can help understand some of the cravings, desires, attachments you have in this life. If you see your past lives, you can notice that, this is from that previous life. And now this kind of shows you how craving moves forward from what I'm describing to you, that cravings and residual memories from your previous lives move into this life. In each life, that's what's occurring. So it can help confirm those kinds of things for you. And that's why I can share it and I can speak on it and I can explain to you that absolutely this is what's occurring, because that's what I saw in my own experience when I observed past lives, is these kinds of benefits. And then your last question is, do enlightened beings know when they'll die? Some do and some don't. Not everybody does, because, that would be permanence, right? But some actually do. The Buddha advised his students 3 months before his death that he was going to actually die. And some people know, essentially when they're going to die. And if you do, okay, so be it, no big deal. Again, that's not the goal, but it is possible to be able to know when you're going to die. And for some people, they will know that and some people won't. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't really care. It's not really important when you're going to die. Your mind is already so peaceful in the present moment that when death occurs, it really doesn't matter. Okay, got it. Thank you so much for this new clarity. You're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So what I'll do is just end our class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your questions, Vibhav and Helena. Appreciate you guys participating in the class. And at the same time, I'll invite you guys to our future classes, because this Saturday we have our Pali Canon and English study group at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And then we have our Introduction to the Path to Enlightenment course that is happening on Saturday at 1 p.m. Thai time. Then, of course, on Sunday, we have our group learning program at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And then on Monday, we have the Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course starting on Monday at 9 a.m. And that's Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that's happening through our live stream, but also at the temple here in Chiang Mai. And I teach that same course every month, the first full week of every month. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.